Long before the arrival of Spanish ships and colonial flags, the vast landscapes of South America were home to ancient civilizations rich in tradition, innovation, and rhythm. Across rainforests, highlands, river valleys, and deserts, people lived lives deeply intertwined with the land and sky, the seasons and spirits. Among the most prominent civilizations were the Inca of the Andes, the Muisca of the Colombian highlands, and various peoples of the Amazon and Southern Cone. Each adapted to their unique environments, shaping sophisticated societies with architecture, agriculture, and spiritual systems suited to their world. In the high Andes, where the air is thin and the earth rises toward the clouds, the Inca civilization flourished. Their stone cities, like Cusco and Machu Picchu, were built with precision and care. But even in simpler villages, daily life followed rhythms of balance and reverence. Homes were made of stone or adobe, with thatched roofs woven from highland grasses. They were often oval or rectangular, arranged in small clusters around shared courtyards. Inside, the warmth of a central fire gave comfort against the mountain chill. People slept on woven mats or animal hides. Alpaca and llama wool provided warmth, spun and dyed into colorful textiles that adorned both the body and the home. Walls were decorated with woven hangings, gourds, tools, and offerings to ancestors. Family life was communal. Children learned by watching. Elders taught through stories. Tasks were shared, and laughter mixed with the clatter of weaving looms and grinding stones. In the valleys and lowlands, homes were often made of wood, bamboo, or palm, raised on stilts to avoid floods and damp. Roofs of palm leaves rustled in the wind. These structures, open to the breeze, kept families cool and shaded. Hammocks swayed inside, cradling sleep and quiet conversation. Communities were connected by rivers rather than roads, and canoes served as lifelines through the green corridors of the rainforest. Across these regions, social organization was based on kinship and cooperation. Work was done collectively. Fields were planted, homes repaired, food shared. The Inca practiced a system called mita, labor given to the state in return for security, food, and infrastructure. Roads, bridges, terraces, and storage houses were built by communities, often high in the mountains. Religious life was rich and layered. The sun, moon, stars, and earth itself were sacred. Temples and shrines dotted the land, from mountaintops to springs. Ancestors were honored, often mummified and kept close, consulted through rituals and dreams. Every stone had spirit, every mountain a name. Festivals marked the planting and harvest, the solstices and equinoxes. Music filled these occasions, drums, flutes, panpipes, and songs in languages now nearly lost. Even among the majestic stonework of the Andes, the golden glow of Inca festivals, and the misty jungles of the Amazon, life in ancient South America wasn't all ceremony and seriousness. For every priest consulting the stars or farmer shaping the terraces of a mountainside, there were mishaps, misunderstandings, and moments of laughter. Like people everywhere, the indigenous peoples of South America lived lives rich in humor, though the history books often forget to mention it. Start with the llamas. Llamas were essential to Andean life, pack animals, sources of wool, and even spiritual figures. But they were also famously moody. They spit, they sat down mid-journey and refused to move. You can imagine an Inca porter arguing with a particularly stubborn llama halfway up a steep trail, trying to coax it forward while the rest of the caravan laughed and offered advice like, "Try singing to it," or "Promise it some corn beer." Of course, the llama just blinked slowly and refused to budge. Then there were guinea pigs, cuy. Today, they're mostly pets in many parts of the world, but in the Andes, they were dinner. Families kept dozens of them in their homes, and children loved chasing them around. Imagine the chaos of trying to catch one for a feast, only for the entire batch to scatter under beds and between pots. Perhaps a child named their favorite cuy something ridiculous like fast lightning and defended it from becoming stew, even though everyone knew its days were numbered. High-altitude cooking could also be a bit of a gamble. Fires don't burn as hot in thin air, and potatoes, despite being a staple, weren't always cooperative. Picture a young cook trying to boil a batch of potatoes for hours, only to find them still firm. Meanwhile, an elder chuckles from the corner, mumbling, "That's because you didn't whisper to them first." Whether it was true or not, you can bet it became part of the teasing tradition. Ceremonies, with their elaborate rituals and public displays, were the perfect settings for things to go comically wrong. Maybe during a sun festival, a young drummer got over-enthusiastic and knocked over a row of dancers. Or someone forgot their part in a sacred chant and tried to improvise, accidentally invoking the spirit of the alpaca instead of the moon. Someone else might trip on their ceremonial cloak mid-procession, and the entire plaza has to pretend nothing happened, even though half the people are stifling giggles behind feathered fans. There were probably known pranksters in each village, those who rearranged offerings at shrines just enough to confuse the priest the next morning, or who added a little too much chili pepper to someone's stew as a blessing of fire. One particularly mischievous teen might sneak up during a llama blessing and draw a mustache on a sleeping guard with charcoal. These small acts weren't acts of rebellion, they were community color, the fabric of familiarity and fun. Andean trade routes were serious undertakings, but even here, hilarity must have followed. Merchants walking for days would play guessing games, tell jokes, or mock each other's walking pace. There surely was a legend of someone getting lost following a wrong alpaca for half a day before realizing it wasn't part of their herd. A wrong turn wasn't just a mistake. It was a story to tell at every campfire afterward. Even the mighty Chasquis, the relay runners who sprinted across mountains carrying royal messages, were not immune to error. Imagine a young runner, nervous and breathless, delivering an urgent message to a village, only to realize he left it behind. Or worse, he delivered the wrong one. The emperor sends a blessing of maize, when it was supposed to be, "Prepare for a royal inspection." Panic, apologies, and a frantic sprint back would follow, all of which would be told and retold as legend. In jungle regions, humor took its own form. Imagine a child imitating the howler monkeys to scare their siblings at night, or the entire village laughing when someone tripped over a tapir root disguised as a log. Rainstorms might suddenly douse a romantic courtship attempt, and a poorly placed hammock could lead to spectacular tumbles, followed by teasing chants that stuck for years. Storytelling itself often involved humor. Trickster tales were common, stories of foxes outwitting jaguars, humans who tried to cheat the gods and ended up turned into frogs, or magical hummingbirds that taught lazy hunters a lesson. These stories didn't just entertain children, they helped adults reflect, chuckle, and remember that even the mighty fall flat sometimes. And in every community, There was that one person, the one who exaggerated every tale, who claimed to have once danced with a cloud spirit or wrestled a mountain puma. No one believed him, but everyone listened. His stories grew more ridiculous with each telling, and still people leaned in by the fire, waiting to laugh. So, while history often preserves the grandeur, the empires, the architecture, the astronomy, it's the quiet, silly moments that often bring these people closest to us. The missed steps, the llama spit, the forgotten lyrics, the mischievous children, and the stew that was just a little too spicy. These are the things that made life vibrant. The ancient South Americans were astronomers and builders, farmers and philosophers, but they were also friends, siblings, neighbors, and pranksters. Their greatness wasn't just in stone temples or golden treasures. It was in laughter shared over meals, jokes whispered during rituals, and the playful mistakes that made their days a little lighter. Those moments may not have been written into stone, but they linger in the echoes of stories, in the rhythm of old songs, and maybe even in the knowing smirk of a llama. Eating was as spiritual as it was practical. The diet of South American peoples reflected their landscapes. In the highlands, potatoes were a cornerstone. Dozens, even hundreds of varieties were cultivated. They were boiled, roasted, or freeze-dried into chuño, stored for seasons to come. Maize, too, was vital. Ground into flour, cooked into thick drinks, or baked as flatbreads. Quinoa, rich in protein, was sown in mountain terraces, then boiled and mixed with herbs or meats. In valleys and along rivers, manioc, cassava, was central. This starchy root was peeled, grated, and cooked carefully to remove natural toxins. It became flatbreads, porridges, and fermented drinks. Peanuts, squash, beans, peppers, and sweet potatoes added flavor and nourishment. Tomatoes and avocados, native to the region, appeared in meals as they do even now. Meat came from alpacas, llamas, guinea pigs, and wild game. In the jungle, fish, birds, and monkeys were hunted with blowguns and traps. Insects were sometimes eaten for protein. In colder areas, meat was dried and salted into charqui, the ancestor of modern jerky. Cooking was done in clay pots or on heated stones. Fires burned in hearths or outside under thatched awnings. Meals were shared communally. Food was placed in woven baskets or clay bowls, passed from hand to hand. Chicha, a fermented corn drink, was often served during celebrations, sipped from gourd cups. Preservation was vital. Potatoes became chuño, meat became charqui, grains were kept in cool, dry silos. This ensured survival through dry seasons, droughts, or travel. In the Inca Empire, vast storehouses called kulkas were filled with food and supplies, distributed in times of need. Food was always linked to the divine. Offerings were made to the earth goddess Pachamama before planting. The first bite of a meal might be dropped on the ground in gratitude. Sacred meals were prepared for festivals, for funerals, for the new moon. Cooking was not just labor, it was ceremony. Children were taught to help early, peeling potatoes, grinding maize, fetching water. They learned the smells and textures of each ingredient, the songs sung while cooking, the stories told around the fire. Elders were fed first, honored with the best portions. Hospitality was central. A visitor, even a stranger, was offered food before words. Trade connected far-flung communities. Coastal fish was traded for highland quinoa. Amazonian fruits were exchanged for woven goods. These networks, often maintained by foot or canoe, carried not only goods, but language, ideas, and flavors. Even without markets, the continent pulsed with movement and sharing. Seasons dictated meals. Rainy season meant fresh roots and greens. Dry season called for preserved grains and meats. Harvest festivals burst with abundance, music, dancing, roasting fires, the scent of cooked corn and spiced stews drifting across the hills. In the end, to live and eat in ancient South America was to be in constant conversation with the land. Every meal was shaped by mountains, rivers, skies, and ancestors. It was a way of living that fed both body and spirit, a daily act of memory, balance, and reverence. Though empires fell and cities were lost to time, these foodways and lifeways endure. In kitchens across the Andes, in stories whispered in the jungle, in the hands that shape dough and light fires, the old rhythms remain. Not forgotten, simply waiting, like seeds in the soil, for those who listen.